Yeah, so you said like a whole bunch of like nuanced things that really didn't make sense. So could you like elaborate on that, like be more specific?
Yeah, I don't know how that didn't make sense. I literally know who you are. I've had many conversations with you. You're not remedial. So I know you understood what I said. It's pretty self-explanatory.
You remember
You're
me?
claiming an you're claiming an yet what are you talking about, Diego? Yes. I've had multiple conversations with you. Anyways, you're claiming an obligation at the moment of birth, but I'm asking you if you're claiming that there's an obligation to be had over this individual, that clearly the obligation would be because you've brought this individual into this point in time of them being like your offspring, right? And you're just claiming that through birth this obligation is recognized. I'm asking you, why would it not be at the very beginning of you placing them in the state of dependency that this obligation would be
Yeah,
recognized?
so yeah. So like my obligation, my stance on obligation is it literally does not matter. It could be like at conception, right? So the moment you have like obligation, now at that point you can exert a preference on what you want on that being since they can exert a preference. So let's say like a fetus did
Oh,
have
great. So like,
consciousness.
oh, okay. So
Yeah,
like a
let's say a
parent can
fetus
choose
did
to.
have
No, 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 no,
consciousness.
no. Great. Yeah. So I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
So based on your argument, then at the moment after birth, then like the parent can choose that they want to kill their kid.
No, obviously not. No.
Oh,
But we
obviously. No, no,
assume,
but
yeah,
that's their
we
preference.
assume. Yeah,
That's their preference.
we assume their preference, right? At
Well,
that
no,
point
but
because they haven't
that's what they
exerted a previous
assume. That's what
preference.
they assume. That's their
Yeah, yeah, I'm
assumption
just
upon the preference of that child.
yeah, I'm just clarifying. Obviously, we wouldn't like kill a child
Well, why? You say
because
it's
they haven't
obvious.
exerted
You
like a
say it's
previous
obvious,
preference,
but
right?
based on your principle, it doesn't seem to be.
Yeah. So like I'm just like re-clarifying. Like I can backtrack if you want. Like I'll just do that. So because they haven't like exerted a preference, obviously they can't communicate at that age. We're just gonna assume that their preference would be to continue living
Why? Why would we assume?
because they have not exerted a preference yet at that point.
So why are we then erring on the side of life in this instance, but in the other instance, when they still can't exert a preference when they're in the womb, we
Because
don't
at
err
that
on the side of life?
because
Why
my
do we
stance
abandon the precautionary principle?
yeah, because at that point they can't exert a preference and there is no like existence of consciousness for them to even like actualize that.
Bro, you're saying the same thing in both instances. You're saying that when a newborn baby is born, they cannot exert preferences. Thus, we assume their preferences and apply the precautionary principle and err on the side of life. I then ask you, why do we not do the same thing when it is within the womb? And you go, oh, because they can't exert a preference. What?
There, yeah, like I held the same
That's the
principle that the last guy
same
had. Yeah,
thing.
it's consciousness, right? Consciousness has to be the first step, right? And after consciousness, then they can exert a
Okay,
preference.
when's consciousness?
I can't define like when consciousness is. We
Okay, so
can
you value
recognize when
something
it.
arbitrary. So you value something arbitrary
Well,
that
it's
you can't
no, no,
even
no.
nail down when it
Conscious.
begins.
Wait. Consciousness is not arbitrary. It's just nuance, right? Nobody
You
can definitively
literally
say.
can't nail it down
Wait,
when it's
no.
arbitrary.
Nobody can definitively say at this point in time consciousness begins. Nobody can say
That
that.
right, which makes it arbitrary.
No, it makes it
Because if you're basing
nuanced.
no, it makes it arbitrary. If you're basing your argument on this and you cannot nail it down and it is a sliding scale, it becomes an arbitrary variable. What are you talking about?
No, it's nuance. There's a huge difference. So something being arbitrary means that it doesn't matter. Clearly, when it comes to like rights, consciousness would matter, right? We want to know if something is conscious, right? Whether it's an animal or not, it doesn't necessarily have to be an animal. It could be a plant, whether a plant had consciousness, right? It's nuance. We can't definitively say at this point in time it becomes this. Arbitrary means that it just doesn't matter at all. Clearly, consciousness does matter.
Right. So then, if consciousness does matter, and you even just said it with animals or like plants, right? Even cells, cellular life is shown to like show like possibilities of like consciousness in the way in which that it moves and like the ways like the actions in which it does, like with like apoptosis, right? Where it like literally the cells will like decide to like kill themselves based on the benefit of the organism or to the organism, right? So like it could be argued that even cells hold some kind of form of like conscious, right? Or consciousness. But like I would still say that this seems arbitrary because there's even animals that hold consciousness, but it's not to the like it doesn't make it so that they have rights.
Yeah. So can animals like exert a preference? Can they communicate to us that they want to live?
No, can newborn babies?
Okay, so this is why my principle is it kind of has like two steps to it. First
No,
is
it does.
consciousness, and then it has to exert a preference.
Okay, great. That's awesome. So again, you're so an animal's the same as a newborn baby, so newborn babies don't have rights.
Well, clearly we can't kill a newborn baby, right? It's
Oh,
born now. It
why?
has a consciousness.
Why? You're
Yeah.
saying this is you're saying this is so you're saying keep saying using these words obviously and clearly. And if I'm trying to work off your framework, I don't see where this becomes obvious or clear.
Yeah, if you could let me explain. So intuitively, we can say that it's wrong to kill like a
Oh,
newborn baby. The same
intuitive.
way we can
Oh,
intuitively say that it's wrong to kill an animal just off a whim, right? But the point, the standard that
to
I
kill an
hold is the moment it
animal?
exerts a preference.
What? Wait, what? You said we can intuitively say that it's wrong to kill an animal off a whim?
Yeah, would I just go outside and like murder a cat, like just because?
Would you go outside and murder a cat just because? Well, I would argue that animals don't have rights. So I would say, like, I wouldn't say that you should do this, but can you? I would say yes.
Wait, you think that animals don't have rights?
No, animals don't have rights.
Do you think it's okay to essay a cat like just outside? Like,
Do
is
I
it
think
okay
it's
for me to just bring
okay?
it in and then just do whatever I want to it?
No, I would say that like because
Why?
animals don't. Yeah, I would say that animals because of if you would let me answer, I would say that animals don't have rights. So therefore, like anything can be done to them. But I would not say that like individuals, or I would not advocate for individuals to do this. But I would say that there's no groundings as to why this wouldn't be legally permissible.
So
There's
isn't
no
that kind of
rights
like
violation
the
that's
same
occurring.
standard that I'm holding, right? The only difference that I'm making,
No,
right, is
no,
that I'm applying the
it's not.
same principle to
It's
humans.
not. Not even remotely. Yes, you're applying the same instance to humans, which
Yeah,
is
so
exactly why it's
we both
not
agree,
the
and then you're
same, bro. Which is why
yeah
it's not
we
the
both agree,
same,
but
bro. Like, what are
you're
you
trying to
talking
like
about?
twist my argument. Like you just admitted that you agreed with me that there's clearly a difference between the two.
No, we're not saying the same thing, bro. I'm literally saying that animals don't have rights because animals don't hold any capacity for higher rationale thinking. Human beings hold rights because we have the capacity for higher rationale thinking. This is clearly what separates man from beast, right? We're able to partake in argumentation, conflict resolution, all of these things that separate us from like the animals within the animal kingdom. This is why humans hold rights and animals do not have them. Animals can have legal permissions granted through a society, right? Or a government in which that is like or like protections, not even permissions, protections, legal protections around them. But this doesn't mean that they have rights.
Okay, so this is where like our fundamental belief on what rights are like differ, right? Because I believe that no rights exist, that all rights are just civil rights. That's the rights that you're describing. All rights are just pretty much like quote unquote like moral not agreements, moral like principles that we follow that are granted or like recognized by like some higher entity. So this is where our I guess differences lie. I don't believe that there exists a human right.
What?
Yeah, I'm just stating my position because for some reason we're
No,
like
yeah, I
stuck
just
on this
don't
topic.
understand. I just don't understand. Like, I don't understand how you would say like you believe that all rights are civil rights. Like what?
Yeah, that's just my position on it.
Property rights are civil rights.
Yeah,
What? Self ownership, the right over your body, is a civil right.
yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so how are you defining a civil right?
Like I just said, like a more pretty much the same the standard you held, like for a right, I guess. The only principle that I'm applying is that it's recognized by some entity and social norms, and we just follow them.
Social norms and we just follow them. So then you base that whatever a society deems as being permissible is permissible.
No, I just said that this is how it is. I'm not arguing that this is how it ought to be.
Right, but this is clearly not how it is. Even when
This
we
is
look at through even when we look through history, this isn't how it is. Just because a society agrees upon some rights violation at some point, that doesn't mean that this rights violation becomes justified or becomes okay or accepted. If anything, what it means is that the exact opposite occurs and that a violent revolution happens in protest of the rights violation that is occurring. It has nothing to do with the society.
so you're
Society
saying
can
that
try and
you're saying
deem
that you're
something society can try and deem something as being a right or just or moral, but it doesn't make it so.
yeah, so you would have to offer the burden of proof on why that is. Right. So what you're just saying is you're like making a claim. You're just denying what I'm saying. My claim is that because you can't really argue against this, that all rights are
Mm,
just civil rights. You would have to make the case for the existence of like a human right and how this is like objective. But I digress.
yeah, I've already you digress. Okay. Do you not believe in self-ownership?
No, I'm not sure if you're familiar with like a state of nature. His name was like I forget his name. Not like the Aristotle state of nature or anything like that. His name was uh I can't pronounce his name. He's Italian. He wrote a book on like the prison reform back in like 1700s. He described humans and society like existing in a state of nature, and because we all consent to like being in a society, that we also consent to the rights that are granted to us. Because if not, like what are we? We're just animals. We exist in a state of nature.
That doesn't that literally didn't answer my question, bro. That has nothing to do with self-ownership. What? That has
Yeah,
nothing to do whether or not you hold ownership over yourself. What?
yeah. So cavemen, like back in the day, cavemen, right? They didn't believe in self ownership. They would just like kill because like it was for self preservation. I wouldn't say that self preservation is a right. It's more of like an instinct. You just want to live. Okay, this is what the state of nature describes. Everybody is born into a state of nature. So the moment you said historically like this is wrong, that's because they consented to that right. Right? They consented to being protected, and so they consented to the rights of self preservation or self ownership. That they believe that this and my framework, being recognized by like some government or entity, uh, like or social norm, like this would be a social norm in this case, if they consented to being in that group or that society, then of course this is still a civil right. It's recognized by some social norm or entity. But again, this wasn't like an argument I was trying to have. I just said that we like differed on this opinion.
No, yeah, and I guess if we just like differ on this opinion, then I don't really feel like we could even like debate further because if you're just gonna claim that like human rights don't exist, then like there's no way that we could even like get
No, of
into a
course we can still
conversation to
argue
like
rights. We can still argue rights. It's just our fundamental understanding of like how rights begin is different. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean we can't debate this because
I
we
mean, I
both
guess,
recognize
bro.
we both recognize rights exist. That's all that matters in this conversation.
Yeah, but again, I've already gone like at your whole consciousness position. We've already debated, bro. Gotten literally nowhere. Like, what do you mean? What
Do you
more
want to
is there to
restart?
debate?
I feel like
No,
I feel like
what do
we
you mean
went on so many
restart, bro? Like, what are you
tangents.
talking about, bro? Like, I already went at your whole consciousness argument. I
Yeah, I
already,
feel like we went
like,
on a bunch of tangents, so it was kind of hard to like pinpoint like an actual like definitive position and like just attack that, I guess.
well, I mean, like, I definitely tried, bro. So, like, no, like, I'm good.
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm just gonna ask you like the three basic questions I guess that you asked. So what are rights? Where do they begin? And I
Where do
forgot the
they come
last
from
one.
and when do they
And
begin?
where do they yeah,
Yeah, I
where do
would
they
say
come
that.
from and
Yeah,
where
I'd
they
say
begin?
rights are moral or legal entitlements. And I would say that where they come from is they stem from virtue of being human. And I would say that they don't come from anywhere. I would say that they simply have always existed, that there was something that man simply discovered and found as a way for us to be able to peacefully coexist with each other. And then I would say that when they begin is obviously at the moment in which that human life would begin, which would be at the moment of conception, which is why
So
I'm pro-life.
so when it comes to like abortion, I'm just trying to like relate it to abortion. Do you
Yeah.
not see any difference between like a fetus? I'm gonna call it a fetus. You can call it like whatever you want, a baby, I guess. Do you not see any difference between like a fetus and a human that was, or even like a newborn with consciousness? Do you not see how like they're like entirely separate?
Yeah, so like again, like I would claim same thing like I did with like the other guest as well, would be that like even if like this fetus is at like an early stage where like this hasn't been like actualized, the ability for this hasn't been actualized, that doesn't mean that they don't still have the inherent capacity to be able to like
Yeah, what does inherent capacity mean? What I know what capacity means, but like as it relates to like abortion, why are you
yeah, so
valuing like
yeah,
the
inherent
ability that
capacity.
it
Yeah, the
because it
inherent
doesn't.
capacity is by virtue of being human that we can see that we hold the capacity for higher rationale. So, by virtue of you belonging to the species of human, you have this inherent capacity for higher rationale through your DNA.
Yeah, but you're saying that it hasn't been actualized yet, right?
Right.
All right, so pretty much at this point, what you're saying is like you're valuing the potential for the capacity. You're
No, it's
saying
not. It's
inherent.
not been. No,
Like,
no,
could it
no,
be
no. You
inherent?
just no. It's not the capacity for the potential. That's like a wild. No, capacity and potential are two different things. So capacity is like the means in which that something can get to, right? Potential is what something can get to if it were to get there, right? There's a clear difference.
Yeah, yeah, of course. But what I'm saying, like
The
by
capacity
inherent
that something can
capacity,
hold.
we both acknowledge that eventually it could reach consciousness, or it could reach whatever standard that you're holding to it. It might not be consciousness, but it could reach that eventual point. You're not. It's sort of like you're skipping that it doesn't actually have this actualized. So how come you are saying that it deserves these rights when it hasn't been actualized?
Yeah, because again, I would say that based on the fact that I recognize that individuals within a society will have things like disabilities or disorders that will prevent these things from maybe being able to actualize, I would still say that by virtue of them being human, that they would still hold the same rights that I do, even if they might not have the same kind of cognitive ability that I might. I wouldn't
So
discriminate
literally,
based on
literally just
cognitive
them being,
abilities too.
yeah. So
Yeah.
just them being human, belonging to human DNA. That's what gives them rights.
By being a living human, that is what grants you rights. The moment that you die, you no longer have rights.
I feel like this is just like an appeal to like human exceptionalism, saying that like humans are just
Yeah,
like
it's
fundamentally
essentialism.
different. Yeah,
Yeah,
human
it's
exceptionalism.
essentialism. Essentialism, not exceptionalism. Essentialism. There are essential characteristics of a human that clearly would hold us like
When I
that we
say
would hold like.
exceptionalism, what I'm saying is like when it comes to like a fetus and like an animal or a plant, if it doesn't have consciousness, there's nothing separating them between the two. Of course, they're living entities, but obviously they're not conscious or aware of their surroundings.
Yeah, but it doesn't. Yeah, again, like
Like
that doesn't
there would
matter.
be no difference between like a fetus and like a tree that's outside. Like of course they're both living, but there's nothing that separates them fundamentally except the fact that they're like moral wise, not like biology
No,
wise.
that's not.
Biology
No,
wise, of course, there's things that separate them.
no,
But when
that's
I'm talking
not
about
true.
like
Yeah, that
morally,
tree
like there's
will never.
nothing.
No, that's not true. That tree will never become anything other than a tree. Whereas, like that unconscious fetus will become conscious, and we know that this will happen.
So
It's
it
not like a,
will become conscious. That's the point I'm trying to make is that you're valuing like potential.
even if we, okay, so even if we do talk potential, why would you claim that like the potential doesn't matter?
So why does potential matter? To me, of course,
If
like
we know that something is going to happen, why would we act as though we don't? Seems counterintuitive.
if we know that something is going to happen, why would we act like we don't know
As
it's
though
going to happen? I don't think this is the
why would
case in
we act as
abortion.
though it's not? Why would we act as though we don't know that this is going to happen? Because people
Yeah,
get very dishonest within these debates when they like are like, oh, how do we know that this fetus will be conscious? How do we know that? Of course we do. If it's not interfered with and it's left to its processes that it's going through with development, it will become conscious and it will be like all of these things. So why
yeah,
does
I'm
this not
trying.
matter?
Yeah, I'm trying not to be disingenuous. So, like, I agree with you. Like, if we're just gonna hold that standard, then yeah, of course, I agree with you. What I'm saying is that because it hasn't, like, there's nothing separating it morally from like a tree. We value a tree. It, of course, it's like a living entity, but it doesn't have consciousness. And until like that conscious experience is like present or like we can recognize it, then of course it's granted like some moral consideration.
Yeah, again, like I would argue, same thing that I was doing with the other guest, is that if we look at like the fact that like a brainstem begins developing within a fetus at as early as 5 weeks, and we can see that individuals like Trevor Waltrip were able to have some form of conscious experience with simply his brainstem developed, then I would say that based on the fact that we can see that there's instances of this simply with just the brainstem, we would have to err on this side of life by using the precautionary principle at 5 weeks, where we can clearly see that the brainstem has begun developing, knowing that there could be the possibility that there would be a form of conscious experience that would be happening. And I can present you an analogy to see like if you would agree with this
Yeah,
or not.
can you give that analogy just so
Yeah,
like
yeah. So like I would give you like the cave analogy. Have you ever heard the cave analogy?
I have not.
Okay.
This is my first time debating abortion in like a year. I hate
Yeah, I got
abortion.
you.
I hate
Yeah.
abortion
No.
topics. It's just I saw you here and I saw it was late and I was like I want to talk to Mike again.
He said, "My boy Mike." Yeah, no worries, man. So yeah. So the analogy, right? The analogy that I present to you, this cave analogy, would be that. So say that you own this cave. This cave is your property, right? And you want to destroy this cave to be able to build something in place of it. So you send experts into this cave to tell you if there is signs of human life within this cave before you blow it up, right? And let's say that you have, how am I going to split this up? Let's say you have 50% of the experts that come out and say that there is no sign of life within this cave, right? And then you have 30% of scientists that come out and say, well, we've seen that there could be signs of life within this cave. And then you have another 20% of the scientists that come out, or the experts that come out and say, no, we definitely found irrefutable evidence that there is human life within this cave. You cannot blow up this cave. Do you believe that you still have the right to be able to blow up this cave?
At that point, it depends. Like human life, of course, my standard is consciousness. So whether they were like conscious beings, right? People who are like, and they have already exerted preference, like they're
Right,
conscious
but
and
this
they're
has
aware,
nothing to
and then they
right,
say, "Hey, I want to be alive." Then of
right,
course
but
you
this
wouldn't
doesn't
blow
have
up the
anything
cave.
to right, but this doesn't have anything to do with it, right? Because the instance that I'm taking the analogy for and why this becomes analogous is because the cave is symbolizing the brain before consciousness, or what could be before we've determined that consciousness has existed. The human life within the cave is the consciousness, and the experts looking in the cave are the research in which that is being done to look into consciousness, right? So it's completely analogous. So I'd say, do you believe that you still hold the right, even though 50% of the scientists tell you that there is no signs of human life, 30% tell you that there is a possibility that there's human life, and 20% tell you that there is definitely human life in this cave?
Okay, so again, I'm not saying this to like be frustrating or be argumentative, but just going off this analogy, right? If these researchers went in and said that there's human life in this cave, my next question would be like, okay, well, are they alive? If they said yes, okay, fine. Are they conscious? Are they aware? Right? Because
Yes,
if obviously if they
yes,
just
they're
didn't
alive.
have a
They're
brain or
alive.
nothing,
Yes, they're alive. They're conscious. You've
then no, you
um,
wouldn't blow it up. You wouldn't hurt a conscious being. And
perfect.
if they exerted their
No,
preference, if
no,
they wanted
but
to be
there's
alive,
let's say, okay, fine. Let's say again, to make this even more analogous, let's say that the individuals within the cave have the possibility of being conscious. You don't know if they are or not.
they
Are
would
you
have to
applying
exert
the,
a preference at that point.
are you applying the precautionary principle? Yes or no? You do not know if this individual is conscious, but there is the possibility in which that it could be, but you do not know.
The experts told me not to blow it up. What did the experts say?
Yeah,
Like
50, so yeah,
I
so
get the point you're trying
50%.
to say, and if you can tell me that they said the experts like request that it not be blown up, then obviously I'm gonna concede.
Yeah, well, no, 50% of the scientists I'm telling you are telling you that you can blow up this cave.
Okay,
30% are telling you that you cannot blow up this cave because they see signs of life, but they're not sure if it's there, but they're telling you that you should not blow up this cave. And then 20% are telling you you most definitely cannot blow up this cave in any circumstance because there is irrefutable evidence that there is human life inside.
yeah, to that, if if there is human life and they did say like, oh, don't blow up this cave, at that point I would have to come to my principle. Of course, I would have to determine, is there consciousness, is there not? Okay, do they exert a preference, yes or no? If they don't, I may still just based off of me intuitively, I would say no, I would not blow up the cave until I am 100% certain they have exerted a preference.
I would agree. I would agree. I would apply the precautionary principle if there is
Yeah.
a case in which that human life could be placed in danger or in like volatile danger, right? Like fatal danger. I would say that we would definitely apply the precautionary principle and we would err on the side of life. I would agree.
Yeah, I agree to an extent, but only because like obviously I'm making the assumption that they're already born and everything. Like I wouldn't say like, oh, a human that is about to develop or anything, which
Well,
is
yeah, but
kind
again,
of what
right,
makes
but
this
that's okay.
disanalogous because a
Well, no,
fetus
but
is
that's
in the
why the
process of
analogy.
developing.
Well, no, but that's why the analogy still holds because the researchers are not able to fully tell you whether it is humans that are within that cave or not. This is why you have a split. It's exactly analogous to what we see with fetal research and things of that nature because you have differing opinions from all aspects and all sides and
And when like
absolutes
a
that are
conscious
being stated.
experience begins,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
yeah, but this is the difference, right?
I've looked into four different, I've looked, I can pull four different studies, bro. I've looked
Yeah,
into
this
the
is the
consciousness argument, and I can
yeah,
look up
this is the
four different
only
studies that all give me different windows when conscious experience begins.
yeah, this is the only difference that I see with this analogy, right? Is that a fetus is clearly like in a separate, entirely different development state than a human life. If you say human life, I'm going to assume that they're already born.
You're going to assume that they're already born. Yeah, again, this doesn't matter to the analogy.
How so?
Yeah,
Because
so
to
again,
me,
look,
there's a huge difference between like being born and pre-born.
yeah, I would say that like what's the difference?
Yeah, because if there's gonna be human life inside of a cave, like why would I assume otherwise that the human life is already born? Why would it
Yeah,
be pre-born?
you do realize that the cave is representative of like the woman's womb, right? And that the life inside of it that isn't determined as to whether it's a life is supposed to represent the fetus, right?
Okay,
This
hold up.
is
Yeah, give me
directly
give me some time to
analogous.
think. Yeah, I'm trying to think. So no, because okay,
How?
this is why it's not right because what you're doing is you're shifting the way reality works. That's just not how reality works.
No, yeah, but that's
Yeah.
wait. Are you claiming that the hypothetical isn't realistic?
Well, it's not that it's not realistic. I don't care about like realistic. What I'm saying is like it's
Right.
disanalogous because you're comparing like two separate realities.
Mm, how? What? Elaborate.
Yeah, okay, so clearly a fetus in the womb is different from a cave, right? The fetus is developing inside of a womb. I know you're saying that the cave is analogous to the womb, but the cave itself is not alive. The cave itself does not have a
What does that
right or
matter?
anything. It cannot exert a preference.
What does that matter?
Yeah, because in my framework, with a
Because in my analogy, you're still a property owner. The cave
yeah,
is your
yeah,
property, just the same as like the woman's womb would be her property.
because it's just not based in reality. Like let's say for instance that would happen,
This is
right? When it comes
directly
to morals,
analogous, bro.
yeah, so morals, where morals come from, they come from our like our recognition on rights and wrongs in reality. If you were to shift reality, of course right and wrong would become different. Like for instance, like if killing, if it's going to be hard to conceptualize, but if uh everybody today just agreed that, oh, you know what, uh unaliving, I'm trying to like avoid words, unaliving your firstborn is okay 12 months or 12 years after they're grown. If everybody just said, oh yeah, that's okay, then clearly reality shifted, clearly our morals shifted. Like that's just not based in reality, and that's why that moral or that principle is
Yeah, I
disanalogous
would.
because
No,
it's a
I would.
shift in
Wait, are
reality.
you claiming that the wait? You're claiming that the precautionary principle is a shift from reality?
No. The principle is the of no, of course, if you wanted to use like a precautionary principle on anything, you can apply that. So in this case, yes, I would apply it. But in the case of like the right to life, no, I would not apply that.
What do you mean in the case of
Who
the
sent
right
me a
to life?
gift, yo? What?
Yeah, you got a galaxy, my friend.
Who sent that? Thank you.
Will.
Thank you. I don't know why you did that, but okay.
But yeah, I would have to ask what you mean by like when it has to do with like the right to life. Like what do you mean? Not applying the precautionary principle when it has to do with the right to life. I'm confused what
Yeah,
you
so
mean by like
when it
how
comes to
that's
like
not a
principles on
yeah.
how like we should operate, there's a difference between like how we should operate on what we ought to do versus like what is right and what is wrong. So of course we could apply that specific principle, but if you told me that it was wrong whether like I decided to end the life or not, then like we would have like a different argument. Because I would say it's not wrong, or I would say that it's not right, or etc. Because you're like shifting reality, you're shifting how morals work. Because morals are like rooted in our understanding of reality of what is right and wrong.
But I don't think that what do you call you inherently have rights as a zygote. Like for example, I think it comes at 40 days, as opposed to or brain activity, as opposed to what do you call it, just being alive.
I mean, I
I
get
don't
that, but you
think.
kept stating it was because of worth or value. So I would argue that, like, if, let's say, they don't reach that capacity, they don't actually actualize their abilities, right? They're born with that part of their brain missing, or they're born without a brain, right? Does that mean
If
that
you
those
if you're if
children
you
wouldn't
have
have rights then if they
if you
can't reach
have
that?
if you have no brain activity at all, you won't be born. Your heart wouldn't even start to beat.
Okay, I'm
Well, I
saying
think okay,
there.
so I think what Kay is trying to get at is like cases of like with like hydranencephaly, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, but they still
anencephaly in
have
the
brain
case of that.
activity. They have like almost none of their brain, but they still got part of their brain.
Right, right.
So I said brain activity. I didn't say full brain. Of course, I get that why
No, yeah.
people don't have full developed brains. That's
No,
why
I
I'm
can
I know,
see
but
different
what
from.
you were saying like they like had the ability to do this or to reach this capacity. So I was just curious on how far you take that.
I said brain activity, and I take that to its full extent. So if anyone does not have brain activity, they would not be born. There's nobody being born without brain activity.
no, yeah,
Okay,
I can. Well, hold up. I can see where your argument is. I would just say that like, the reason why I don't agree with it is I would just find it to be kind of like arbitrary, right? Because I would say that if we know that by virtue of being human that you are going to have this, right? This is going to be developed. This isn't something that has potential. This is going to be developed. If left to right, it's natural developing processes. This is
Mm-hmm.
going to be there, right? I would say that it would be arbitrary to say that we must see this actualized as opposed to starting it at the beginning, right? The way that I usually
No,
put this for people is that,
but I'm saying
well, real quick,
that.
real quick.
Go ahead.
The way that I would put this for people, right, is that I feel like there's 2 points in a line that matter most, which is the end of the line and the beginning of the line. At the end of the line is what we can clearly agree is brain death, right? And we can see that as such. But then when we see that there's the beginning of the line, I would see that it would only make sense to put it at the most beginning fundamental stages of this human life being brought into existence.
That would be the safest position. It doesn't mean it's the right position.
Right. Well, I would say that also is a form of adopting the precautionary principle, which we should always be adopting when we're dealing
I
with
do
human
think that the
life.
precautionary. I usually stick to the precautionary position, but in this situation, the precautionary position also does cause harm to those who are well, not actually, not really. The precautionary position does cause a lot of restrictions on things that I think will inevitably have a negative effect towards people. So that's why I don't adopt the most precautionary measure. I used to be pro-life for a long time, so I mean, I think
Yeah, you said why would you not adopt the precautionary principle in this circumstance?
because I don't think that it's the most justified position, and I think the justification gets weaker. What do you call once you go pre-brain activity? I don't think the justification is strong enough to make it illegal. I think you could say it's wrong, you shouldn't do it, but I don't think that the what do you call the justification be pre 40 days is enough that I would say is going to be objectively illegal for everyone else based on my rationale.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess, like, if you're stating right that your position would rely on like some form of like consciousness, right, to be like actualized, then I guess like I wouldn't
No, not
necessarily like.
consciousness. Consciousness starts at 24 weeks. I'm not saying you have to be conscious. A lot of people are
So,
born
yeah,
unconscious.
so you're just saying brain activity, right?
Yeah,
In
there's a
general.
big difference because
Yeah,
consciousness is like
right.
24 weeks. Brain activity is only five
Well,
weeks. There's like,
yeah, well, I mean, consciousness is kind of a sliding scale. They don't really have it nailed down. I've looked at a lot of different studies. Like I've looked at
yeah.
4 different ones, and it goes anywhere from like 20, I think you said it was like 24 weeks, and then it goes all the way back to, like, I seen one that said like 10 to 12 weeks. So it's very sliding scale, right?
Yeah,
Um,
and there's some that even say 28 weeks too. So it's so
right, right, right.
yeah, you're right. It's very consciousness itself is actually we don't know what it is, so it's hard to define what you don't know. So people that
Right.
claim to have this objective definition of consciousness are just like people that either are very pro-life and they want to make the argument that it's conscious, or they're very pro-choice and they say it's not conscious. So then they kind of like generate their own arbitrary standards and then try to impose it like as objective.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm
No,
gonna hop off because I gotta go
yeah.
pray. But thank
Yeah.
you
Thanks
for
for
the
jumping in, man. Yeah, man.
yeah, man. I just wanted to share my
Blessings.
view and what you think of it. Like, what do you think of it actually? Out of curiosity.
No, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, like, I'd probably tell you the same thing that I've told, my friends when they've kind of came to me with this position, is I do think that it's a strong one. I think that, you can definitely argue the fact that it's like, that it seems to be the case, right? That there's not really a sign of, like, you obviously would say that it's life, but I don't know if you would necessarily say that it is like
Person. You
a
can say it's a life, but not a person.
right, right, right. Exactly. Yeah. Person. Exactly. Yeah. The personhood argument. I would say that, like, of all the personhood arguments, that I think that when you're actually honest with it and you bring it down to a point such as like 5 weeks, I can at least hear that out, because it's not like you're just making some arbitrary line far
Mm-hmm.
into it to try and justify your position. But
And
like,
next,
I would still think that it's, somewhat arbitrary. Like, I feel like it's kind of like a whim, right? I feel like it's
mm-hmm.
kind of like you feel like this is where the line should be drawn, so you're drawing it here, which I do kind of feel is a little arbitrary rather than just going to the beginning. But I can't necessarily knock the stance. I mean, it knocks out abortion pretty much out of the equation, so like I can't knock it.
Other question I wanted to ask you is: are you Christian? Out of curiosity.
I mean, like, so I would definitely say that, like, I hold to Christian ideals, but I definitely tend to question all religions. I've kind of been on this path for like the past few months, um, where I've really kind of started getting
Wait.
back to like my faith and things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
but I wouldn't say that like my position isn't necessarily like rooted in
No,
that.
I'm not saying it's based on Christian at all. No, actually, do not. I'm not one of those that's gonna like attack your religion or attack your views based on your religion. But I want to ask you a question as a Christian. Do you think that the Bible, what do you call, believes life begins at conception? And if so, where's the proof for that?
I mean, I would argue, I mean, if we're really talking about like with like creationism, right? And there being like and believing in there being like God, right? I would say that
Mm-hmm.
that if we know that God is all knowing and is omnipotent and is all existing, which means that he exists outside of time, which means that he would exist in all times, then I would say
Okay,
that
so wait 1 second. I want to answer someone in the comment who said that it's hard to believe in religion when there's 4,000 different religions. So that's actually like a really dumb thing because that acts like all religions are
right,
equal, right? There's like
yeah,
4,000 possible shapes of the earth, right? So imagine someone says, oh, because there's 4,000 possible shapes of the earth, I will not believe the earth actually exists. No, round is the objectively correct one and is the most proven one. And then what do
right,
you call, actually, no, round is the closest to the most correct. We have, what is it? The earth is slightly elliptical, right? So those two
right,
shapes are like
oblique,
basically the
yeah,
closest to like accurate, right? The rest of them are just a bunch of counterfeit shapes, right? If I say the earth is a square, it's a triangle, it's a piranha, hexagon, all of those are just false shapes. That doesn't mean that the earth does not have a shape just because so many shapes have been proposed, right? Throughout history, people have proposed many, many shapes because they thought that the earth was many, many different ways. So to say that because there's thousands of possible shapes of the earth doesn't have a shape is super stupid, and that's the same argument you're making against religion. So
right.
just silence
But yeah, no, yeah. To answer your question though, like I would say that when we look at the Bible, right? So like again, like saying that like believing that God is all knowing and is omnipotent, so he's living outside of time. He's not held to the constructs in which that man is. I would say that when we look at the verse that says that I knew you even when you were in the womb, right? I would say that
it
that
says
is him.
yeah, of
I would
course,
say I
God
would say
knows
that
this.
that is right. But I would say that by knowing us and knowing who we are, that clearly would be like indicating in which that like our what makes us our person, right?
So
Was already tied to us. It was already
one
identifiable
one
to
thing
us,
I will
right?
say, what do you call, is that one says you were in the womb and then say like that when you were conceived. Second of all, because God exists outside of time, He would know us before we even existed. Therefore, that argument, because God exists out of time, is actually makes it not sorry, makes it flawed. If God existed in time, he could say, "Oh, he's knowing you because you exist." But no, God can know us even if we don't exist, right? So God knew me when Adam was there. God knew me before Adam came to earth. And of course, I know you're a Christian and I'm a Muslim. So our creation, Muslims don't believe. So Muslims believe in the general stories of the Bible, but we believe a lot of the dates were added. So we don't believe Adam, for example, existed exactly 6,000 years ago. Could have been millions,
Right,
but people kind of changed it up, right? But we
right,
believe the Bible overall, like the numbers and dates, are a bit just subjectively added later on by writers. So that's why we don't take the Bible, although we believe in Jesus, we don't, for example, take him as God. We take him as the Messiah and prophet, but we don't think that God came to earth. We don't
right,
believe, for example, like
right.
the
The
Exodus was
Trinity, yeah.
600,000 people. We believe that it was a lot less, right? So people just added these numbers to like exaggerate things. So Muslims' belief tends to be a little different from Christians. So when oh, I lost my point. Sorry, you could go. I actually lost where I was going with this.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, so like again, I would just like I would say that like I guess like I don't really know like an exact verse I guess that would prove, right, that I could like substantiate like life beginning at conception, but I would just like again I would argue not only based on like essentialism, but also if we were to like place in like creationism, I would say that like we were all created for a purpose, right? We were all made within this plan, within this construct. So I would say that, like, yeah, we were identifiable or known to our being
No,
when we were
yeah,
born. Like,
I
even
mean,
like you said, like you said,
but
even if he knew us prior to existence, I would say that that would be as much as you said that that would be a defeater. I would argue that that would be even much like even more of like evidence in my like towards like my angle to say that like
but
even if he knew us before
no,
you existed that he clearly knew you and could identify you, right? So therefore, like at the moment in which
no.
that you actually like were brought into like conception, like it would only make sense that like that would be in your life
That
beginning.
is saying that you existed at conception, right? So, for example, I could argue the fetus and the soul enters the womb a lot later than conception, right? So, for example, if thing not no, let me continue before you like. I don't want. I know you're trying to interject right now, but what do you call when? What do you call? For example, most zygotes get expelled in the womb, so that would be to say that God inherently just genocided two-thirds, not genocide. I hate those liberal terms. God basically ended the life of two-thirds of people the moment they were conceived. Basically, most people's purpose never even got served because what I think was it 80% gets dropped immediately. So I think that the soul is put later
Hmm.
on, right when brain activity begins, or somewhere around there, like as opposed to just being at conception. I think that
Yeah,
what do you call
well,
all of you just popping in and then popping out of existence immediately? Like I don't think that God would do that to just someone and then send them to the
yeah,
afterlife. So,
I would argue that when we're talking about like miscarriage, right, that like that wouldn't be an act that God like made take place. That simply is just like a biological process that's like happening within the body, right? Like I'm sure that you believe in which the like divine intervention like isn't something that can just be had like at any kind of a whim, right? So like God's not going to become involved in like these situations that occur when we have like issues within our bodies that like cause for these things to take place. But I wouldn't say that that necessarily means that like he would be to blame.
no, you don't blame God. I don't. I mean, I don't
Well, that's
agree with that
right.
logic. But what do you
Right, but
call?
that's what I'm saying. But like that, but like you kind of like were saying like because you were like, well, that would mean that like God genocided,
No, but
however
that's why I took the
many.
term back. But I'm saying that that would mean that God inherently created a system in which most people just pop out of existence, kind of like immediately.
But you could argue that. I mean, I'm not saying I believe this, but I've heard a lot of people talk about this, and people who are religious who do suffer with like miscarriage and stuff like that. That like their purpose on this earth was fulfilled, even though it might not seem to anybody. But let's just say like you miscarry at like 4 months, like for some
Mm-hmm.
reason that life was already fulfilling its purpose. And you could argue that that's what it is, even if it was a short time. And you could say the same thing for a 6 month old baby. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Outside of the womb, people
I
wonder why
actually,
a little life is taken so early, but
yeah,
maybe they already fulfilled their purpose and just not knowing it.
yeah. I agree with you. Like, for example, someone's purpose might not even be their own, right? So the purpose of the baby and having the miscarriage might be to bring you closer to God because you lost your child. So the child itself served the purpose of bringing you closer to God, and that's what his life was actually meant to do. So even though he never did anything of its own, just existing, he helped other people get closure or get closer to God or other things. So yeah, I actually think that your perspective is a very good perspective, and I like that perspective. Thank you very much.
But yeah, I
But I
don't
am going
think.
to hop off because I am wasting time and I did need to go. So thank you guys very much. It
No,
was nice
you're
talking
good,
to you
man.
guys. And I'll
I
probably
gotta
see y'all
jump off
later.
too. Yeah, God bless, man.
God bless you as well.
All right, so maybe him is sleeping. I don't know, but I'm gonna head over to Discord.
Yeah, I got you. I'll see you in there.